Before this story begins, there's no need to focus too closely. You don't need to picture every detail or remember every name. This is simply a memory told slowly by someone who lived it long ago. If you're listening as the day winds down, you can let the details come and go. Nothing in this story will ask anything of you. It will move at its own pace, just as the sea always does. What you're about to hear is the recollection of a sailor who spent years aboard a pirate ship in the late 17th century. Not a legend, not a myth, just one life shaped by wind, wood, and time. You can listen closely, or you can let the words fade into the background as the story unfolds. Either way, the sea remembers everything, and tonight so do I.
I didn't come to the sea because I wanted adventure. Men who said that on land usually meant they wanted distance, from debts, from names spoken too often, from obligations that tightened like rope around the throat. In the ports of the 17th century, everyone had a reason for leaving, and few of them were heroic. I came because the world I knew had narrowed. Ports were crowded then, more than people imagine. The great trading empires had swollen the coastlines with men who worked the sea without ever owning it. Sailors slept 3 to a room, sometimes 5. Wages arrived late, if at all. A man could spend a year hauling sugar or tobacco across the Atlantic only to be paid in promises. His share eaten by agents, brokers, and captains who answered to flags rather than fairness. The land remembered your debts better than it remembered your labor. The sea did not remember at all. The ship that took me was anchored just beyond the noise of the market, its hull darkened by tar and years of salt. It did not fly a flag. That alone told me more than any signboard could have. Legitimate ships announced themselves. They wanted to be recognized by the right authorities. This one did not. In the late 17th century, ships like this were everywhere and nowhere at once. Some had once sailed under commission, privateers licensed by crowns to harass enemy trade. When wars ended, the licenses vanished, but the crews remained. Ships do not return to obedience easily once they have learned independence. I stood on the dock longer than I should have, watching the tide tug at the hull. The ship moved constantly, never quite still, as if it rejected the idea of waiting. That restlessness was deliberate. Ships that lingered too long in port invited attention, and attention was the enemy of anyone operating in the margins of empire. A man noticed me. He was older, his face carved by sun and decisions. He wore no uniform. That mattered. Pirate crews didn't value decoration. They valued competence and restraint. The man's hands were scarred in the way that comes from rope, not blade. A working sailor. "You waitin'?" he asked, "or leavin'?" I hesitated. That was answer enough. "Then you'd better decide," he said. "Ships like this don't recruit forever." Recruitment is the wrong word, historically speaking. Pirates did not advertise. They absorbed. Men arrived through rumor, desperation, and proximity. Some were volunteers. Some were coerced. Most were something in between. I stepped onto the plank. The ship shifted under my weight, and I felt the subtle judgment of the sea immediately. Balance mattered here. Awareness mattered. Carelessness was not punished once. It was punished permanently. The deck was worn smooth by years of pacing. Sailors pace when they think. They pace when they wait. They pace when they are deciding whether to stay or leave. The smell of the ship was sharp and layered. Tar, salt, damp wood, old smoke, and beneath it all the faint sourness of long voyages. A man approached me with the calm authority of someone who had been elected rather than appointed. This was important. Pirate captains were not born into command. They were chosen. Crews voted them in, and just as importantly, they could vote them out. Authority on such ships rested on trust, competence, and the ability to deliver profit without unnecessary loss. The man before me was not the captain. He was the quartermaster. Historically, the quartermaster was often more powerful than the captain in day-to-day matters. He represented the crew. He distributed shares. He enforced discipline. If the captain was strategy, the quartermaster was justice. "What's your name?" he asked. I told him. "What do you do?" he asked. Not what had I done, not where did I come from. What do you do? I understood then that identity here was functional, not narrative. "I work," I said. "I keep watch. I follow orders." The quartermaster studied my face for a long moment. Pirate crews were famously pragmatic. They didn't care about honor stories. They cared about reliability. "That'll do," he said. "Below deck, stow your things. Boatswain will find you work." Below deck was darker than I expected. Lantern light barely pushed back the shadows. Hammocks hung close together, not out of camaraderie, but necessity. Space was currency at sea, and privacy was a luxury almost no one could afford. Men glanced at me without curiosity. New arrivals were common. So were departures. Pirate crews fluctuated constantly. Some men stayed for years. Others left after a single voyage, taken their share and disappeared into ports that would never ask where the money came from. I stowed my bundle near a beam already scarred by knives and initials. Names carved by men who wanted to be remembered somewhere, even if history forgot them. When I returned to the deck, work began immediately. There was no ceremony, no initiation. That, too, is history correct in fiction. Pirates did not romanticize induction. A man proved himself by surviving routine first. I hauled rope, I coiled line. I learned quickly which knots mattered and which were decorative. Sailors could tell the difference at a glance. A poor knot was not just sloppy, it was dangerous. The boatswain watched everything. He corrected mistakes without comment. Praise was rare. Silence meant approval. As we worked, I began to understand the ship, not as a vehicle, but as a system. Every task connected to another, every failure cascaded. The sea punished inefficiency ruthlessly. Later, the captain appeared. He did not announce himself. That was deliberate. Pirate captains rarely relied on spectacle. Their authority rested on reputation. When a captain walked onto the deck and work sharpened instinctively, that was respect earned through experience, not costume. He surveyed the ship as if reading a ledger. His eyes lingered on small things, a frayed line, a misaligned block. He corrected none of them himself. He noted them. That told me more about his leadership than any speech could have. When he spoke, it was quiet. "We sail," he said. That was enough. Sails were raised. The anchor came up with a groan that vibrated through the hull. The dock receded. Faces on shore blurred. No one waved. Sailors didn't wave goodbye unless they expected never to return. As the ship leaned into the wind, I felt the deck tilt beneath me. The sea claimed us gently at first, like a test. The older sailor, the one who had first spoken to me, watched my expression. "Trust the lean," he said. "Ships that don't lean don't go anywhere." That was not a metaphor, it was seamanship. The first day passed in motion and instruction. The second brought routine. Routine is how indoctrination actually occurs, not through ideology, but through repetition. By nightfall, I stood my first watch. The sea at night was darker than I expected. The stars seemed closer, sharper, as if the sky had descended to inspect us. Lanterns were shielded. Light discipline mattered. Historically, pirate ships were careful at night. Light revealed position. Darkness preserved choice. A man beside me spoke quietly. "You ever sailed before?" "Yes," I said. "Ever sail without permission?" I shook my head. He nodded. "That'll change how you think about maps." He was right. Maps, I would learn, were not truths. They were suggestions enforced by power. Pirates survived by knowing where maps were outdated, incomplete, or intentionally wrong. Below deck that night, sleep came poorly. Hammocks swayed. Men breathed in uneven rhythms. The ship spoke constantly in wood and rope. Every sound carried meaning, and I had not yet learned the language. In the early hours, movement above deck woke me. Not panic, precision. I climbed quietly, drawn by instinct rather than order. The captain stood at the bow watching the horizon. The quartermaster approached him and spoke in a voice too low to hear. The captain nodded once. I followed the line of his gaze. At first there was nothing, then a faint point of light, far off, swaying against the dark. A lantern. The captain did not react. Pirates did not rush information. They weighed it. The older sailor leaned close to me. "You see it?" he whispered. I nodded. "That's how it starts," he said. "Not with cannon, with noticing." I felt the ship adjust course slightly, barely perceptible unless you were paying attention. Sails shifted. A lantern was extinguished. Voices fell away. The sea did not change, but everything else did. As the distant light persisted, I understood something that no book had taught me. Piracy was not chaos. It was discipline applied outside the law. And as the ship slid forward under a darkened sky, toward a light that did not yet know it was being watched, I realized that my life on land had already ended. Not because I had boarded a pirate ship, but because I had learned how quietly power really moves. Hunting at sea does not feel like pursuit. That misunderstanding has ruined more men than cannon fire ever did. On land, hunting is movement. Footsteps, broken brush, breath measured against distance. At sea, hunting is subtraction. You remove possibilities until only one remains. You wait until the ocean itself narrows the world for you. After we left port, the captain did not announce a target. That was deliberate. In the late 17th century, pirate crews didn't sail with fixed objectives. Fixed objectives created patterns. Patterns were noticed. Patterns invited patrols. Instead, pirates moved through zones, areas where trade flowed predictably, where geography forced ships into corridors they could not avoid. Sugar from Barbados, tobacco from Virginia, silver from New Spain. Empires like to imagine these flows as arteries under their control. Pirates understood them as habits. Habits could be interrupted. We sailed towards such a habit. The route was not marked on any official chart, but everyone aboard knew it. Sailors shared knowledge the way rivers share sediment, slowly, collectively, without attribution. No one needed to say where we were going. The sea told us through traffic. The first days passed without incident. This, too, was expected. Merchant ships did not appear constantly. They moved in rhythms shaped by wind, tide, and convoy schedules. A ship laden with sugar preferred calm seas and predictable currents. A ship carrying perishable goods, avoided unnecessary delay. Pirates learned to read these preferences like a language. As we sailed, the captain altered course subtly, never holding a straight line for long. We did not want to look like a ship going somewhere. We wanted to look like a ship being carried. This mattered. Historically, pirates relied on disguise more than force. Flags were changed, damage was feigned, sails were deliberately mishandled to appear understaffed or inexperienced. A confident merchant avoided danger. A greedy one approached it. We offered ambiguity. During the day, the crew worked as usual, but the tone had changed since the previous act of violence. Men scanned the horizon more often. Conversations drifted towards speculation. "Spanish sail come through here," one man said quietly. "English, more likely," another replied. "Spanish hugged the coast." These were not idle guesses. They were assessments based on decades of shared maritime behavior. Spanish fleets preferred protection and predictability. English merchants favored speed and profit. French ships sailed differently still, their rigging and paint telling stories before a flag was ever seen. I learned to see these differences gradually. At first, a sail was just canvas. Then it became information. The quartermaster taught us what to look for. "How she rides the water," he said. "Heavy ships sit low, light ones dance." And the sails. "Too neat means discipline. Too sloppy means panic. Somewhere in between means money." The days lengthened. Boredom crept in, thick and insidious. This was the most dangerous enemy aboard any ship. Men fidgeted. They drank more than usual. Small irritations flared into arguments and then died again. The ship existed in a state of suspended intent, waiting for the sea to answer a question it had not yet been asked. At night, the crew gathered below deck, where the air was warmer and the light dim. Stories emerged, not of glory, but of mistakes. A man spoke of a chase that had gone on too long, drawing a patrol ship into the fight. Another spoke of a merchant vessel that turned out to be bait, its cargo worthless and its escort deadly. These stories were not meant to frighten, they were meant to instruct. Pirate culture was pragmatic to the point of brutality. Mistakes were shared, so they would not be repeated. No one was spared embarrassment. Survival was the only standard. One night, Elias, the former Navy sailor, spread a crude map on the table. It was not official. No seals, no borders, just coastlines and notes scratched into parchment. "Here," he said, tapping a narrow channel between islands. "Ships funnel through this stretch when the wind turns west. They don't like it, but they don't have a choice." "Patrols?" someone asked. "Intermittent," Elias replied. "They can't cover everything. That's why piracy works at all." That sentence carried more history than most books. Piracy existed not because empires were weak, but because they were stretched. The Atlantic world had expanded faster than governance could follow. Trade multiplied, enforcement lagged. We lived in that gap. On the 6th day, the sea changed. Not dramatically, not enough to warrant alarm, just enough to tighten the ship's responses. The wind came unevenly now, gusting and dropping without warning. Clouds gathered in low, fast-moving layers. This kind of weather scattered convoys. Merchant captains hated unpredictability. Many chose to sail alone, rather than risk collision or delay. Alone, they were faster and vulnerable. The lookout's call came near dusk. "Sail west-southwest." The captain raised his glass. The sail was small and steady, moving with confidence rather than haste. That told us something. This ship believed itself safe. We didn't close immediately. Pirates didn't pounce like predators in stories. They stalked like accountants. Distance was reduced carefully, using the failing light to compress space without revealing intent. As the sun dipped, the merchant ship adjusted its sails slightly. That movement confirmed it was crewed competently. This was not an inexperienced vessel. The quartermaster joined the captain. "English," he said. "You can tell by the cut." "And the cargo?" the captain asked. "Sugar or tobacco?" "Too low for silver." The captain nodded. "Enough." We waited longer. This is where most men fail. Waiting creates doubt. Doubt creates action. Action at the wrong moment creates disaster. The merchant ship's lanterns were lit as night fell. That was standard practice. Light meant safety among legitimate ships. To pirates, light meant certainty. The captain ordered our lanterns extinguished. Darkness folded around us. We adjusted course slightly, angling toward the merchant's path rather than following directly. This reduced the chance of detection while shortening interception time. At this distance, the merchant crew would not yet be alarmed. They would assume any nearby darkness was empty sea. That assumption was our ally. As we closed, the captain ordered the black flag prepared, but not raised. Pirates did not reveal identity until necessary. Reputation was a weapon best deployed precisely. Too early, and a merchant might flee. Too late, and confusion could turn violent. We moved into position. The moment of realization came exactly as history predicts. The merchant's watch spotted us not because we appeared suddenly, but because we failed to disappear. The human eye notices anomalies before details. Movement where there should be none. Silence where there should be sound. A shout carried across the water. Lanterns swung wildly aboard the merchant ship as men scrambled to respond. That was when the captain ordered the flag raised. Black against the night. The psychological effect was immediate. Pirates understood fear as a tool. A frightened crew surrendered faster and fought less effectively. The flag was not a threat. It was an invitation to choose survival. The merchant attempted to run. This too was expected. The captain ordered an interception course rather than pursuit. Cutting across the ship's path forced it to make harder decisions, bleeding speed and confidence simultaneously. A cannon was loaded, not aimed at the hull, across the bow. The shot tore through the water, sending spray cascading over the merchant's deck. No structural damage, maximum message. Historically, warning shots were common. Pirates preferred intact prizes. Dead ships yielded nothing but problems. The merchant captain hailed us, voice cracking. "We're under English protection," he shouted. The captain did not respond. Another shot skipped closer. The merchant ship slowed, then stopped. The transfer of power was complete before a single man stepped aboard. Boarding was controlled and efficient. Weapons were lowered, crew separated. Resistance evaporated under the weight of inevitability. What followed was inventory, not violence. Cargo was inspected, manifests compared to reality, lies identified quickly. Sailors are poor liars under pressure. We took what we could carry and what we needed most. Water, food, rope, information. Information mattered more than gold. "Who's been patrolling these waters?" the captain asked the merchant master quietly. The man answered. Names were exchanged, routes discussed, schedules revealed. That historically is how pirates stayed ahead, by turning commerce into intelligence. We released the merchant ship intact. This too was strategy. A spared crew spread a different kind of story. Not one a massacre, but a calculation. Such stories discouraged resistance and reduced future bloodshed. As we sailed away, the mood aboard our ship shifted. We had succeeded, but success carried weight. The crew felt it. Not celebration, confirmation. We had entered the system fully now. We were no longer observers. We were participants in a war that rarely declared itself openly. That night, as the ship settled into its course and the horizon vanished into darkness, I understood something fundamental about piracy. It was not rebellion, it was competition. A competition between speed and authority, between adaptation and inertia, between violence at sea does not begin with anger. It begins with calculation. By the time the patrol ship revealed itself fully, we had already been fighting it for hours, not with cannon or blade, but with position, with wind, with the quiet refusal to behave the way it expected. The ship that came for us was built for authority. That was obvious even at a distance. Its hull sat deep and steady in the water, weighted by iron and intention. Its sails were trimmed cleanly, not for speed, but for control. This was a vessel designed to remain at sea, to impose presence rather than pursue glory. Ships like this formed the backbone of anti-piracy campaigns in the late 17th century, when crowns finally understood that piracy could not be suppressed by reaction alone. They were wrong in one important way. Presence creates predictability. Predictability creates vulnerability. The captain saw it immediately. The patrol ship followed a pattern. Broad arcs, measured turns, sails adjusted conservatively. It expected pirates to flee outright, to reveal themselves through panic. That expectation shaped its approach. We did not flee, we drifted. This unsettled them. The first warning shot did not come as a surprise. Historically, patrol vessels fired early not to destroy, but to establish authority. The sound carried farther than the iron. It announced jurisdiction. The cannonball skipped across the water ahead of us, throwing up a column of spray that collapsed back into the sea as if nothing had happened. The captain did not respond. Silence is a weapon when wielded deliberately. The patrol ship closed the distance. This was dangerous. At range, its heavier guns could punch through our hull with ease. Our ship was faster, more agile, but fragile by comparison. A prolonged exchange would end us. The captain knew this. He waited until the patrol committed fully, until its course locked and its gunners adjusted for expectation rather than reality. Then he moved. Angle, he said. The command was simple, but its execution required discipline. We turned sharply, not away, but across the patrol's approach, forcing it to correct its aim mid-motion. This mattered. 17th century naval guns were devastating, but imprecise. Reloading took time. Re-aiming under pressure was unreliable. We exploited that delay. Our first volley was not aimed at the hull. That choice was historical, not heroic. Pirates targeted rigging because it neutralized without destroying. A ship without sails is not a threat. It is a problem for someone else. Our cannon fire shredded canvas and rope. Lines snapped. Blocks flew free, whipping across the patrol's deck with lethal unpredictability. One mast shuddered but held. The patrol fired back. The sound was overwhelming. Cannon fire is not a single noise. It is a series of overlapping violences. The ignition, the recoil, the tearing of air, the impact. Wood exploded inward as a shot struck our side, sending splinters across the deck. Splinters were more dangerous than the cannonball itself. They cut without mercy. A man near me went down screaming, clutching his shoulder. Blood soaked into the planks almost immediately. No one stopped to help him yet. This, too, was reality. In battle, priorities narrow. The captain ordered another turn, tightening the angle. We fired again, this time higher, aiming for the patrol's remaining rigging. Smoke rolled across the deck, thick and blinding. Men coughed, swore, worked by memory rather than sight. Time became unreliable. Historically, most naval engagements lasted far longer than participants remembered. The brain compresses terror, moments blur, decisions feel simultaneous when they are not. The patrol attempted to rake us, turning to fire along the length of our deck, a maneuver designed to maximize damage. This was standard doctrine. The captain anticipated it and ordered a counter-turn that reduced the effect to glance and blows. Still, we suffered. A shot tore through the rail. Another smashed into a cannon carriage, killing the gun crew instantly. Their bodies collapsed where they stood, their work unfinished. The sea did not pause. When the patrol ship attempted boarding, it was not out of desperation, but doctrine. Boarding allowed trained soldiers to I remember striking at someone without knowing who he was, only that he was moving toward me. I remember the shock of impact traveling up my arm, the sound it made too dull to be imagined. The grappling lines were cut, axes swung, ropes parted. The patrol ship drifted away, its boarders stranded or dead. But the patrol was not finished. It fired again at close range. The shot tore into our stern, collapsing part of the deck. Men were thrown. One didn't rise. The captain didn't hesitate. Damage control, he ordered. Keep her moving. Historically, ships were lost, not to single hits, but to accumulated damage. Control and flooding mattered more than continuing fire. Men dropped weapons and ran to plug holes, to reinforce beams, to keep the sea out. The wounded were dragged clear, blood mixed with seawater, creating slick patches underfoot. The patrol ship hesitated. This was the moment of decision. Pursuit would risk further damage. Withdrawal would concede failure. It withdrew, not dramatically, not decisively. It turned away, its purpose frustrated, its authority dented. We did not chase. Chasing would have invited destruction. As distance opened between us, the firing ceased. Smoke drifted away on the wind. The silence that followed was unsettling, like waking after a nightmare and finding the room unchanged. We took inventory. Men were dead, others wounded. The hull was compromised but holding. Our supplies were diminished. We had survived. Historically, this is the point at which pirate crews either disintegrated or hardened. Survival validated leadership, but it also exposed vulnerability. Authority had to adapt or fracture. The captain gathered us only after the immediate work was done. He didn't speak of victory. He spoke of consequence. They will remember this, he said. They will adjust. He was right. Naval authorities learn quickly. Each failed engagement refined future response. Piracy was a dialogue. The sea didn't punish us for surviving. That was the most unsettling part. In the days after our first true engagement, the water remained calm, the wind cooperative, the sky unremarkable. If you judged events by weather alone, you would have believed we had passed through danger untouched. But ships remember what men try to forget. The hull spoke first, not loudly, not dramatically. It spoke in the language of strain, subtle changes in how she answered the wind, the way certain seams wept despite repeated caulking, the new groans that emerged only when the sea pressed at an unfamiliar angle. These were not failures yet. They were warnings. Historically, pirate ships rarely sank outright in battle. They died slowly, through accumulated compromise. Damage reduced speed. Reduced speed invited pursuit. Pursuit forced harder choices. Below deck, the wounded lay suspended in hammocks, bodies swaying in rhythm with the ship. There were no surgeons aboard. Pirate crews relied on experience, improvisation, and luck. Alcohol dulled pain. Clean cloth slowed bleeding. Sea air did the rest. Men who would have been dead on land survived here. Men who would have recovered on land sometimes did not. I watched one man's fever rise over days, his skin slick with sweat, his breath shallow. No wound looked severe enough to justify the decline. That too was common. Infection did not announce itself. It simply arrived and stayed. The living learned to step carefully around the dying. Above deck, the mood changed more profoundly. Adrenaline faded. Routine returned, but altered. Men checked lines more often, not because they doubted their knots, but because repeated action provided reassurance. Cannons were cleaned again and again, their barrels shining more than necessary. Weapons were handled compulsively, not out of readiness, but out of anxiety. This was not fear of immediate danger, it was fear of implication. Historically, this was a point at which pirate crews either solidified or fractured. Success brought scrutiny. Failure brought annihilation. Survival brought questions. What now? The quartermaster and boatswain took inventory in silence, their tallies revealing a narrowing future. Powder was down, shot was limited, water was adequate but no longer abundant. Repairs consumed time we did not fully possess. Time mattered more than money now. In the late 17th century, anti-piracy efforts had evolved. Naval authorities no longer chased pirates individually. They coordinated. Ships were assigned to regions rather than routes. Information moved faster than vessels. We felt that tightening without seeing it directly. The first sign was absence. We passed through waters that should have held traffic, merchant sails, fishing craft, the ordinary movement of commerce. Instead, the horizon remained empty longer than expected. This was not coincidence. Trade adapts quickly when threatened. Merchants delayed departures. Convoys shifted timing. Ships hugged coasts or clustered under escort. Piracy works best against habits. When habits change, piracy starves. The crew felt it. Men who had spoken confidently days earlier grew quiet. Conversations ended abruptly when certain topics arose. I noticed how often people glanced at the horizon, not with expectation, but with apprehension. Waiting had changed shape. Below deck, arguments surfaced where none had existed before. They were not loud. That would have been easier. They were sharp, precise, edged with resentment that had been waiting for permission to surface. "We stayed too long," someone muttered. "We didn't press hard enough," someone else countered. "We should have disappeared when we had the chance." Each claim was defensible. That was the problem. Pirate crews governed themselves through consensus more than command. This was often romanticized, but in practice it created fragility. Consensus works when interests align. Under pressure, alignment dissolves. The captain addressed this directly. He did not threaten. He did not plead. He reminded. "This ship survives because it moves as one," he said. not because we agree on everything, but because we agree on survival. Historically, captains who attempted to rule through fear rarely lasted. Crews mutinied, split, or abandoned them. Authority among pirates was conditional and pragmatic. But even pragmatic authority has limits. As days passed, the ship's routine grew strained. Watches were extended, sleep shortened. Fatigue crept in unnoticed at first, then unmistakably. A missed knot, a delayed response. Small errors that would have been inconsequential weeks earlier now carried weight. The sea notices fatigue. One afternoon, a man slipped while hauling line. The fall was not severe, but the way it happened, slow, unsteady, made everyone watching uneasy. Elias, the former Navy sailor, said quietly, "That's how it starts." He didn't need to explain. Navy discipline was harsher, but more predictable. Pirate freedom came at the cost of internal enforcement. When men grew tired, mistakes multiplied. When mistakes multiplied, trust eroded. That night I overheard the quartermaster and the captain speaking in low voices. "We're being anticipated," the quartermaster said. "Yes," the captain replied. "They know our waters." "They always do," the captain said. "Eventually." This exchange revealed something important. The captain had never believed escape was permanent. Piracy was never an end state. It was a phase between order and suppression. History confirms this relentlessly. The so-called golden age of piracy ended not because pirates lacked skill, but because empires adapted. They improved intelligence sharing. They offered pardons selectively. They executed publicly when pardons failed. Pirates were outpaced, not outgunned. The next confirmation came when we intercepted a small coastal sloop. Not a prize, not a threat, but a messenger of reality. The captain questioned its master privately. When he returned, his expression had hardened. "They know our sail," he said. "They know our damage." That knowledge did not come from magic. It came from spared crews, from port gossip, from merchants who described us in taverns, their fear magnifying details into certainty. Mercy, historically, was double-edged. We had bought goodwill, but we had also spread our reputation. Reputation invites response. From that moment on, paranoia became justified. Men watched one another more closely. Alliances shifted subtly. Trust, once assumed, now required reinforcement. This was not betrayal. It was survival recalibrating. The captain made another decision. He abandoned familiar routes. This was risky. Known routes offered predictable conditions. Unknown waters offered surprise, but also uncertainty. Historically, pirate crews often failed during such transitions, misjudging geography or weather, but remaining predictable was worse. We sailed irregular hours. We altered speed unpredictably. Lantern discipline tightened further. Silence became policy at night. Still, the pressure did not ease. On the 10th day after the engagement, the lookout spotted smoke on the horizon. Not ship smoke, land smoke. This meant settlement, camp, or signal. Each possibility carried danger. The captain studied it carefully. "Someone's watching these waters," he said. That was the final confirmation. We were no longer incidental. We were noted. That night, the captain gathered the crew. He spoke plainly. "There's a ship assigned to this region," he said. "Larger than the one we faced. Better armed. Slower, but persistent." He paused. "It expects us to run." Silence followed. "We will not," he said. This was not bravado. It was necessity. Historically, pirates who attempted endless flight were cornered and destroyed. Those who survived long enough to leave often did so by eliminating immediate threats decisively, crippling patrol vessels to buy time. This decision marked the transition from opportunistic piracy to existential conflict, and the crew understood. This would not be another encounter. This would be deliberate. Preparation followed with grim focus. Weapons were redistributed. The wounded who could still function were assigned lighter tasks. Sails were adjusted for maximum maneuverability rather than endurance. Men stopped arguing. Pressure had clarified purpose. I stood at the rail that night, watching the stars wheel overhead, and felt something shift inside me. Fear remained, but it had matured. This was no longer fear of death. It was fear of outliving the moment that still allowed choice. We had reached the point in history where pirate crews either escalated intelligently or vanished quietly. Records are full of names that end here. Men who made the wrong choice, or the right one too late. As the ship cut through the dark water toward an inevitable, pirates did not seek decisive battles. That misunderstanding has survived longer than most of the men it misrepresents. Decisive battles favor states. They favor institutions that can afford loss, replace ships, rotate crews, and rewrite orders. Pirates understood this instinctively. Their victories were not meant to be final. They were meant to interrupt, to create space, to delay the moment when the world closed around them. What we faced now was not interruption. It was confrontation. The ship assigned to these waters had been here before us. Its patrol routes were older than our presence, refined through years of attrition and response. It did not rush. It did not chase rumors. It persisted. This was the evolution of empire. By the late 17th century, European powers had learned something essential. Piracy could not be eliminated through individual punishment alone. Hanging pirates in ports made good theater, but poor policy. What worked was denying pirates room to operate, controlling choke points, overlapping patrols, coordinating intelligence between colonies. We were about to test that system directly. The captain called us together before dawn. He did not speak of honor or freedom. He spoke of math. This ship will not outgun us accidentally, he said. It knows what it's doing. It will hold distance. It will try to force us into predictable movement. He paused. That is where we die. So we would not allow it. The plan was not bold. It was precise. Historically, pirates who survived escalated engagements did so by attacking capability, not force. They crippled patrol ships rather than destroying them, knowing that a disabled vessel was worse for an empire than a sunk one. It demanded resources, explanations, and reallocation. We would do the same. The patrol ship sailed a predictable pattern. Wide arcs meant to dominate territory rather than respond quickly. It assumed its presence was deterrent enough. Deterrence only works against those who accept its logic. We approached indirectly, staying outside its immediate expectation, using weather and visibility as filters. Low cloud cover flattened the horizon. Shifting winds complicated estimation. These conditions favored smaller, faster ships. Historically, pirates preferred such moments. Weather that disrupted order, disrupted hierarchy. Discipline phrase when commands must be repeated. As we closed, the captain ordered our sails adjusted unevenly, simulating damage. This was not deception. It was tradition. Pirates frequently disguised themselves as crippled or undermanned to lure patrols closer, exploiting the confidence bred by authority. The patrol took the bait. It altered course toward us, slowly, deliberately. It wanted certainty. It wanted us close enough to make an example of. That confidence sealed its vulnerability. The captain waited until the patrol committed fully. Then he ordered the sails loosed. Our ship surged forward, shedding its feigned weakness. We turned sharply across the patrol's bow, forcing it to adjust course under pressure. This mattered. 17th century naval guns were powerful but slow. Crews trained for controlled broadsides, not sudden angular engagement, forcing a patrol ship to turn, disrupted its firing sequence and exposed its rigging. We fired first, not at the hull, never at the hull. Our cannon fire shredded sails and rigging, turning canvas into tangled weight. Lines snapped, blocks flew. One mast groaned ominously, its support compromised. The patrol responded with discipline, but discipline has inertia. Their first volley went wide, aimed where we had been, not where we were. We pressed the advantage. Another volley tore through remaining rigging. The mast collapsed, crashing across the deck with devastating effect. Men scattered, orders overlapped. The patrol ship was still dangerous, but it was no longer in control. This was the turning point. Historically, this is where pirate captains chose restraint or ruin. Overconfidence after disabling an enemy often led to catastrophic boarding attempts. The captain avoided that mistake. He ordered us alongside, but not flush. We held an angle that minimized exposure to their remaining guns, while allowing targeted fire into their deck positions. Smoke filled the air. The smell of powder and burned rope choked the breath. The patrol attempted to board. This was expected. Boarding was doctrine. Trained soldiers excelled in close quarters if they could establish footing. Pirates countered this by denying stability. We cut grappling lines aggressively. We flooded the deck with smoke. We struck quickly at men attempting to cross, not with rage, but with urgency. This was not a battle for dominance. It was a battle for time. As minutes passed, the patrol's resistance fractured. Their command structure faltered under unexpected conditions. Orders failed to propagate cleanly. Authority dissolved into individual decision-making. That is where empires suffer. When the patrol's commander fell, not dramatically, but decisively, the remaining resistance collapsed unevenly. Some fought on, others surrendered. Discipline, once broken, could not be restored in chaos. We did not massacre, we disarmed. Historically, pirates who slaughtered patrol crews invited annihilation. Those who disabled and humiliated them invited bureaucracy. Bureaucracy moves slower than vengeance. We stripped the ship of what mattered. Powder, shot, charts, letters. Those letters were more valuable than gold. They revealed patrol coordination, command hierarchy, colonial priorities. They confirmed what the captain already suspected. This ship was part of a larger net, not an isolated threat. We did not keep the vessel. Keeping a patrol ship was impractical and dangerous. Pirates lacked the manpower and legitimacy to operate such craft. Instead, we crippled it and left it afloat, forcing the Empire to respond without granting it a clear narrative of victory. This choice aligned perfectly with history. Pirates who survived longest understood narrative warfare. A sunk ship could be explained. A captured one could be avenged. A disabled one demanded inquiry. As we sailed away, the crew was silent. Not exhausted, not jubilant, aware. We had crossed the final threshold. From this moment forward, there would be no return to opportunistic piracy, no quiet raids, no slipping through gaps unnoticed. The Empire would adapt, and it would adapt faster now. That night, as I stood watch, the sea stretched endlessly in all directions, unchanged by what had passed. The stars burned cold above us, indifferent witnesses to a struggle that meant nothing to them. I understood then what history often hides behind romance. Piracy was never sustainable. It was a reaction to imbalance, a temporary assertion of agency in a world expanding faster than control. Once control caught up, piracy ended, not with a single battle, but with inevitability. We had bought ourselves time. But time is not. History rarely ends where people expect it to. On land, stories are told as arcs, beginnings, climaxes, resolutions. Men like to believe events conclude cleanly, that one moment hands the world to the next like a baton. The sea does not work that way. It erodes rather than concludes. When we finally left the crippled patrol ship behind us, drifting under a sky that did not care what it had witnessed, there was no sense of triumph, only relief, and beneath it something heavier, understanding. We had survived not because we were righteous, nor because we were the strongest force in those waters, but because we had learned faster than the world around us could adapt. That advantage, I knew, was temporary. History confirms this. The so-called golden age of piracy did not collapse because pirates lost their nerve. It collapsed because states learned. They centralized intelligence. They coordinated patrols. They stopped treating piracy as a nuisance and began treating it as warfare. Empires adapt slowly but relentlessly. The captain knew this. In the days that followed our final confrontation, he ordered the ship run harder than before. Repairs were made underway, men working in shifts that blurred day and night. The sails were recut, the hull reinforced where it mattered most. But, more importantly, the ship's behavior changed. We avoided predictable routes. We sailed irregular hours. We abandoned ports we might once have considered safe. Historically, this is exactly what separated surviving pirate crews from those that vanished into the footnotes of Admiralty records. The sea remained calm. That calm was deceptive. Below deck, the wounded healed slowly. Some would never fully recover. One man lost the use of 2 fingers. Another walked with a limp that worsened in cold weather. These were not dramatic losses, but they were permanent. Piracy leaves marks that follow you longer than glory ever does. One evening, I found myself sitting beside Elias, the former Navy sailor. He was repairing a length of rope with meticulous care. "You ever regret it?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Which part?" "Leaving," I said. He tied off the rope, tested it, then finally met my eyes. "No," he said, "but I understand it now." "Understand what?" He gestured vaguely, encompassing the ship, the sea, the unseen world beyond. "Why men build systems," he said. "Why laws exist. Why the sea attracts people who don't fit anywhere else. And why those people never win in the end." That stayed with me, because piracy was never about freedom in the way the stories suggest. It was about margin, about living in the spaces empires could not yet fully control. Once those spaces closed, so did the era. As weeks passed, the crew changed in quieter ways. Some men grew more disciplined, sharper, more dangerous. Others withdrew, becoming contemplative, distant. A few began speaking of leaving. Historically, this is also accurate. Pirate crews were fluid by necessity. Men joined and left when opportunity or survival demanded it. There was no retirement plan, only timing. One morning, the scarred crewman approached me as we watched the sun lift itself from the sea. "You thinking of staying?" he asked. I don't know, I said. He nodded. That means you still can. That was the final lesson the sea gave me. Not everyone who survives a war belongs to the world that survives it. Eventually, we reached waters where pursuit thinned and rumors lost their urgency. The captain announced a dispersal, temporary but honest. Those who wished to take their share and vanish could do so. Those who wished to continue would do so, knowing the risks were now permanent. This too matches history. The most successful pirate captains allowed departure. Forced loyalty rots from the inside. I stood on the deck that night, looking at the ship that had carried me through fear, violence, and understanding. I ran my hand along the rail, feeling the grooves worn by countless others before me, men whose names had not survived, but whose decisions had shaped the world in small, persistent ways. Piracy did not end because it was defeated in a single battle. It ended because the world grew smaller. Maps improved, communication accelerated, empires learned to think like pirates, and then used that knowledge against them. The sea remained vast, but opportunity did not. When I finally left the ship, quietly, without ceremony, I carried no illusion about what I had been part of. We were not heroes. We were not monsters. We were a symptom, a brief one. And as I walked away from the water for the last time, I understood something history rarely explains clearly. The sea does not belong to anyone. But for a short while, when the world had not yet caught up, it allowed men like us to believe otherwise.